It was the spring of 1947. In Rome, at the Angelicum University, there was a young Polish priest, 27 years old, working on his doctorate in theology. His name was Karol Wojtyla. He had been ordained just 8 months prior. He was in the midst of a deep spiritual search, passionately devoted to the works of Saint Teresa of Avila and Saint John of the Cross. Once, he even told his bishop that he wanted to join the Carmelite order and become a cloistered monk. But Bishop Cardinal Sapieha refused him, saying, "Karol is more useful to the Polish Church right now. He will do much greater things in the future." During the Easter holidays, young Father Wojtyla made a decision. He would go to San Giovanni Rotondo. Living there was a mysterious priest who bore the wounds of Christ on his hands. Padre Pio. Everyone was talking about him. Miracles, prophecies, the reading of souls. The young priest wanted to see this saint with his own eyes, speak with him, and make his confession to him. After a long journey, he arrived at the small mountain town. The monastery was quiet and peaceful. The massive crowds hadn't started yet. Padre Pio's fame was spreading, but the true explosion of his renown hadn't yet begun. When young Wojtyla entered the monastery, he quickly went in search of Padre Pio. And then, the moment arrived. In the confessional, 2 men sat face to face. One was 27, a priest full of future promise and undiscovered potential. The other sat opposite him, 60 years old, bearing his wounds and his pain, but also a profound spiritual power. Aside from these 2 men, no one knows what they discussed. Pope John Paul II never revealed the details of this conversation during his lifetime. But witnesses knew one thing: this was no ordinary meeting. It was a deep, spiritual interview that lasted nearly a week, and Padre Pio's thoughts on the young priest were moving in a very different direction. Young Wojtyla attended morning mass. He saw Padre Pio standing at the altar, the wounds on his hands covered in bandages, yet his deep concentration remained unbroken. At noon, they recited the Angelus together. In the evening, he attended the benediction. And every day, he conversed with Padre Pio. He evaluated his doctrine. He tried to understand his spirituality, but all the while, Padre Pio was reading this young priest's heart. He knew exactly what point he would reach in the future. It is right at this point that the legend begins. According to witnesses, one day Padre Pio looked at young Wojtyla. After a long silence, he said slowly, "One day, you will ascend to the highest post in the church." The young priest was astonished. "Me? I'm going to be pope? Impossible." But Padre Pio continued, and this time his words were heavier, darker. "But at the same time, you will see blood and pain. Your white cassock will be stained with blood." Young Wojtyla heard this prophecy, but he couldn't believe it. He was just a young priest from Poland. He had no place in the political structure of the Vatican. A young Polish priest becoming pope. Absurd. Yet the words were etched into his mind. As years passed, he would sometimes tell his friends about this prophecy jokingly. "Padre Pio told me I would be pope, can you believe it?" he would say, and they would laugh, because it truly seemed impossible. But time marched on, and the impossible slowly began to become possible. In 1958, Karol Wojtyla became a bishop. The jokes became fewer. In 1964, he became the Archbishop of Krakow. By then, he no longer mentioned Padre Pio's prophecy at all, because he had started to think, what if it actually comes true? In 1962, something else happened. Karol, now Bishop Wojtyla, was in Rome to attend the Second Vatican Council. He received a letter from Krakow. Dr. Wanda Poltawska, his close friend and colleague of many years, was dying of throat cancer. This woman, a mother of 4 young children, had survived 5 years in a concentration camp during World War II, staying alive miraculously. But now, cancer was consuming her. Doctors had decided to operate, but there was almost no hope. Bishop Wojtyla was devastated when he heard the news. Medicine had done everything it could. Only a miracle remained. And in that moment, he remembered the saint he had met 15 years earlier, Padre Pio. He immediately wrote a letter in Latin. Reverend Father, I ask you to pray for a mother of 4 young girls from Krakow, Poland. She spent 5 years in a concentration camp in Germany during the war, and now she is in grave health due to cancer. She may die. I pray that God, in the presence of the Holy Virgin, shows his mercy to this woman and her family. With love, Karol Wojtyla. He had the letter delivered to Padre Pio through a Vatican official named Angelo Battisti. When Padre Pio read the letter, he said quietly, "We cannot say no to this." These words were spoken with a mysterious certainty. It was as if Padre Pio knew who Wojtyla was and what he would become in the future. A few days later, the miracle happened. Dr. Wanda Poltawska had been prepped for surgery. She was scheduled to go in on Friday. But on Saturday morning, Bishop Wojtyla called. Dr. Poltawska's husband delivered the shocking news. The surgery didn't happen. When the doctors opened her up to operate, they found nothing. The tumor had disappeared. The doctors are facing a mystery. Whether the tumor was benign or malignant, it has completely vanished. This is impossible. How can this be? Bishop Wojtyla thanked God in tears. Then he immediately wrote a second letter to Padre Pio. Reverend Father, the woman living in Krakow, Poland, mother of 4 young girls, suddenly recovered immediately before the surgical operation on November 21st. Thanks be to God. And to you, Reverend Father, I offer my deepest thanks on behalf of her husband and the entire family. With my love, Karol Wojtyla. This event deepened Karol Wojtyla's faith in Padre Pio. Now he knew. This saint was a true instrument of God. And perhaps the prophecy of 1947, perhaps it really would come true. In 1968, Padre Pio died, but the story didn't end there. In October 1978, the conclave gathered in the Vatican. A new pope was to be chosen. After days of deliberations, an unexpected name emerged. Karol Wojtyla, from Poland, the first Slavic pope, and he accepted. On October 16, 1978, he put on the white robes. He became Pope John Paul II. That day, strange stories began to circulate in Rome. In 1947, Padre Pio told him he would be pope, they said. An old Polish priest recounted, young Wojtyla used to mention this prophecy often. Jokingly, he saw it as impossible. But after becoming a bishop, he went silent, because it was starting to become possible. Pope John Paul II never spoke clearly on the matter. He neither confirmed nor denied the prophecy, but one thing is certain: he never hid his admiration for Padre Pio. In 1987, he went to San Giovanni Rotondo as Pope. He knelt at Padre Pio's tomb and prayed. And he said, 27 years ago, in this very place, in a confessional like a prisoner's cell, I met Padre Pio. And today, 27 years later, I see that he is the glory of the living God. But what about the second part of the prophecy? You will see blood and pain. What did that mean? May 13th, 1981. St. Peter's Square, the Vatican. Pope John Paul II was greeting the crowd. Suddenly, gunshots rang out. The Pope collapsed. Blood. The white cassock was stained with blood. An assassination attempt. The bullets had struck the Pope. In that moment, everyone remembered Padre Pio's prophecy. Your white cassock will be stained with blood. The Pope survived miraculously. Surgeries, treatments, a recovery process lasting months. And he always said, "The Virgin Mary saved me." But many people knew Padre Pio was there too. Spiritually, protecting and praying. After 1981, journalist Giuseppe Giacovazzo wrote an article in the Gazzetta del Mezzogiorno. The headline was, Padre Pio told him, "You will be Pope in blood." And the subtitle, A Prophecy About Wojtyla? The story exploded. It began to be discussed all over the world. Pope John Paul II remained silent on the matter again. But his actions spoke volumes. He sent the first letter to initiate the canonization process for Padre Pio. In 2002, as Pope, he declared Padre Pio a saint. In front of 300,000 people at the Vatican. And in his homily he said, I visited him in 1947 as a young priest. He heard my confession, and today I proclaim to the world that he is a saint. So what was the truth? Did Padre Pio really make a prophecy? Austrian Cardinal Alphonse Stickler said, Wojtyla told me. Padre Pio told him, one day you will ascend to the highest post in the church. But the Pope's secretary, Stanisław Dziwisz, denied it. There was no such prophecy. Another witness recounted, Padre Pio addressed young Wojtyla as Your Holiness. That is only said to the Pope. Everyone was astonished at the time. What is the truth? Perhaps the answer is this. It is not the prophecy that matters, but the bond between two saints. Padre Pio saw Wojtyla's soul. He knew he had a great mission, and years later, that mission was fulfilled. Whether it was a prophecy or not, God's plan was carried out. Today, both saints are in heaven. Padre Pio and Pope John Paul II, one Italian, the other Polish. One with wounded hands, the other with a life of suffering, but both showed the same truth. God always prepares those he calls. And their lives become a light for others. If this story moved you, please subscribe and let me know in the comments. Because maybe someone out there today is worried about their future. Maybe they are struggling to see God's plan. And perhaps this story will remind them, God is always one step ahead. He already knows your future. And if you want to discover the mysterious lives of the saints and the secrets of God, subscribe to this channel. Because in every story there is a door opening to eternity. Let us pray for one another, and let us not forget, God's plans always come true, even in unexpected ways.